Good morning, America. You don't need coffee because you have a delicious double shot of life and in between. My name is Patrick Pac-Man Perez. I will be your shot of cortado this morning. That's a light foam with some milk and a nice little espresso shot because we are joined today by a very special guest, and I'll let Diana introduce him. But over here is America's favorite latte, Diana Gonzalez-Lewu, and we have just a straight cup of Joe, Jason Mendez, aka a black dark roast coffee, single origin from South America. There we go. And we're going to be digging into a lot of great things today, talking about social justice, talking about equity, talking about making an impact in different ways. So without any further ado, add your Splenda, get your stevia. Let's do this. Diana, take it away.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I am so happy to welcome today Alex Ferraro. He is an amazing individual that I actually came across meeting in a networking event. It was actually amazing. So let me tell you a little bit about Alex. He's a business development officer. Alex builds network engagement for Social Venture Partners Dallas, a nonprofit focused on capacity building and social impact. He began his career in revenue retention, and his most recent role prior to joining SVP Dallas was representing a patient advocacy group in the healthcare benefit space. Wow. That's great. I'm going to dive into that in a little bit later. He's always enjoyed empowering those that do good. And he started his own fundraising effort in 2023 called the Ferraro Foundation. We're going to dive into that too as well. And he graduated from the University of Arizona with a BS in political science. Oh, wow. So I'm going to hand over to the mic to Alex so that we can dive into, and I definitely want to hear a little bit more about that foundation that you started.
Sure. So first of all, thank you all for having me. Thank you for the wonderful intro. That was hilarious. But the Ferraro Foundation was a passion project that I was doing on the side. It was my little dose of mission driven and impact and kind of scratching that need or that itch to do something for the community, while I was doing work in the for-profit space on the healthcare side. So that revenue retention that you mentioned, that was all client facing and trying to hit KPIs and keep my clients and retain revenue for the companies I was representing. And the Ferraro Foundation was it sounds like it's generational wealth, and that was kind of by design, although it isn't generational wealth. I wish it was. It's just kind of a brand that I built around a fundraising vehicle. And what I did was I got really connected here in Dallas with some nonprofits that are doing really terrific work. The mission around the Ferraro Foundation was equity inside and outside of the home. If you think about that for more than a second, you'll notice that means everything. And then that was also intentional. I wanted to keep it vague and open-minded so that I could kind of get involved in any type of impact that I wanted, since it was, my own project that I was working on. So that allowed me to get connected with all sorts of nonprofits doing great work and play sort of the middleman role. So I would go to people in my personal network or people that I met at networking events, people that might have the capacity to give back to the community. And I would explain to them what these nonprofits are working on, what they need funding for, what's coming up for them, and also about how they help a specific cause. So that was my foray into fundraising, and now I'm here full time with Social Venture Partners.
Oh, nice! And y'all are celebrating 25 years.
That's right.
Around, that's crazy because you don't even look 25.
Well, I barely am older than the company. You're right.
That is awesome.
Wow. Yeah,
that is awesome.
Thank you. So yeah, we Social Venture Partners is great. The team is amazing, and I can share about how I got involved there too, if that's good timing.
Oh, this is perfect timing. Absolutely.
So,
tell us.
With my work with the Ferraro Foundation, I was at a local community foundation. It's kind of a hub for impact and philanthropy in Dallas. It's called the Dallas Foundation. And there I met the CEO of my current employer, Social Venture Partners. His name's Tony Fleo, remarkable person, wonderful philosophies about impact. And he told me, he walked right up to me and he said, "You look interesting. Why are you here? You're younger than everyone else in the room." And he said, "You need to join my young professionals program." And I was like, "Oh, sure, man, I'll do that." And then I, completely didn't intend to do that. And then I saw him again, maybe 6 months later, and kind of the same conversation happened, and then I was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna, we'll meet up. And again, didn't want to meet with him. I'm not really sure why. I guess I wasn't really ready for, that type of, it just wasn't ready yet on my path. But the third time or fourth time I met him, and I was like, okay, I think I need to actually look into what this is. And I thought it was really interesting. It was well timed for me to get involved. I was getting involved in other young professionals programs. So I joined what's called the Dana Juett Residency, which is it's a young professionals program that does so much more than most. And that's what compelled me to ask them, "Hey, I really want to be a part of this team. I want to work for you guys." It teaches you about philosophy. It teaches you about privilege and acknowledging our privilege. It culminates in a mission trip. It's not faith-based, but a mission trip to the Dominican Republic, where we see their social enterprises and how they do much more with fewer resources than we have in the United States. It's supposed to be really profound and impactful. And of course, it's supposed to result in fantastic and genuine relationships, and that it very much has for me. So huge success all around. And I really love the program. I talk to anyone that I think that is, a passionate individual about impact or wants to give back to the community, or may at some point in their career. I pitch it to them and I say, "Look, you really got to think about joining this." So I'm in the current cohort, and at the end of this month, I'll be going to the Dominican. So maybe when we circle back in a couple years for the next episode, I can tell you how it went.
Yes, of course.
That's exciting. Wow. And so, oh wow, that's pretty amazing. So what are the requirements to be a part of this? I mean, can you tell us a little bit more?
Do you have to pay $1,500 or anything?
I'm sorry.
Do you have to pay a fee or anything?
So no. So the residents, the young professionals, are the main beneficiary of this program. They get to contribute an amount that's meaningful to them. That's the way we phrase it. It's mostly to achieve buy-in, and make sure that they're feeling like they're part of this and they're part of something bigger and they're committed. The rest of the fundraising, which is my job, contributes to that, and it subsidizes it. So they're the beneficiary of this program. You get to contribute what is meaningful and, of course, sustainable for yourself. There's an age requirement. You have to be above 21 years old and below 30. The philosophy around this is doing good, better, earlier. A little bit of a mouthful of a slogan, but one of the founders and the funder of the program originally, Dana Juett, who the program is named after, wanted folks to get involved in impact and philanthropy earlier in their career. So that's the mindset around getting them below 30. I know a lot of folks hear that and they're like, "Man, that's strict," and I agree, it is. So I was lucky enough to be approached by Tony when I'm still eligible.
Then you
what kind of what are the backgrounds? Oh, sorry, Jason.
No, go, Patrick. Sorry, go ahead.
What are the kind of the backgrounds of a lot of people who are in the cohort is right now? Is it different students? Is it graduates? Is it entrepreneurs?
Right. So it's super diverse. Yes, to all of those. Students, entrepreneurs, of course, nonprofit leaders, folks that are in philanthropy, many folks that aren't. So they could be in financial services, they could be, they could be in banking, they could be real estate development. There's no specific cause or no specific career area that we limit it to. We mostly look for buy-in, and open-mindedness. The application is really short. It's a competitive application. We can only let in 30 individuals per year, but it's short. There's no interview, and it's all about kind of what you write down and perhaps what you may have said to some of the staff, and we might know your personal buy-in to impact. That's kind of what we're looking for.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think that's great. Yeah, Jason, carry on. Sorry.
Oh no, I was. Well, I mean, I have a few basic questions. We do have a wide audience, and that being said, I just want to have basic questions like, what is revenue retention, and what is generational wealth?
So revenue retention is all about account management, existing customers, right? People that have already been sold for whatever product. So you could argue that you want to retain your listeners, right? And the product is this content. So that's about retaining revenue, and you could do that for almost any business. I did it for a pharmacy benefits company, actually 3 of them. So benefits administration, insurance, and administration of claims.
Oh, pretty cool.
And then generational wealth, you asked about. Generational wealth is about wealth and money, power, connections, assets, anything that you might consider wealth. That's when people say generational wealth, they typically don't mean like happiness. They more mean like assets and financial equity, and the fact that it is passed on generationally, so to the children, and continuing on.
Very interesting.
Except for real estate, as it has imploded. Like, do I want to send this on to my child? I don't know. It's a lot. And I sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I had another question. I think the caffeine is like really hit hard today because I had a good cup of coffee. And I totally blanked. Carry on, Diana.
I was actually going to, because I love everything that you're saying, and I just kind of want to pedal back a little bit. Alex, what initially drew you into social impact work? What made you? I mean, in this group, you're the youngest, and you kind of like reading everything that you sent in your bio that you knew this is what you wanted to do, and what drew you into that?
I'm really not sure. There wasn't really one main pivotal moment, where it hit me in the face, like, oh, I need to go do something. A lot of times you see that, right? With nonprofit founders, especially, it's something that they might have suffered themselves. And sometimes there's a really clear link to why they are dedicated to a certain cause area. I don't have that in my life, and I don't try to claim it. I don't want to, pose as if I suffered some type of major event. Instead, I think it was more my privilege and ability to choose what I do that made me think, well, it seems as though I'm more set up for success in life than others may be around me. And the more as I got my feet under myself as a professional, right out of school, I started to feel like I needed to care about the work I do. And so that this, doing impact work and fundraising for nonprofits and for people that I really believed in their mission, I believed in what they were doing and the impact they were making. It was just so much more compelling than my revenue retention role was. I didn't connect with the success of that work. I wanted to, of course, do a good job, because I took pride in the work I do and earning the salary I made. But that's about where it stopped, right? I didn't really care about the success of the company necessarily. So I wanted that. So I guess even then it was selfish, right? It was for me. No, it's there's no one main pivotal moment? I've been asked that a few times, and I never have a clear answer. It almost makes me think, oh wow, do I not really know myself well enough? Why do I do this? But it's exciting work. It really makes you feel like, what you do is worthwhile. You're helping people. With social venture partners, we do capacity building for nonprofits. They're the beneficiary of our work. That's who we serve. And
that would be the $2,500 grants that y'all give out. Is that what that is?
Right. Yeah. So we deploy our resources in a lot of different ways, and I can go into that a little more detail. We have a lot of different programs. So one of them is the Young Professionals Program, the Dana Juett Residency. Right. That's 30 professionals every year. Now, what we are when you zoom out is a network of professionals. We are social venture partners, and folks that are interested in impact will contribute an amount annually that earns them partnership in social venture partners. So we're a network of those folks. On staff, we're only maybe 5 full-time. But we're able to do so much more by leveraging the network of partners that want to be a part of this. So one of the ways we do that is through kind of our flagship program is pro bono consulting for nonprofits. Each year we can do a slate of pro bono consulting that leverages the skills and the creativity and the connections and the actual, I said skills, but I want to harp on that point a little more. Things that people have been building in their whole career. So Jason, you're a music creator, you're a content creator, you're an editor. I can tell that you're really good at that. If you were a partner, you would be able to leverage that skill set for a nonprofit that wanted to create some content for themselves, let's say. And you'd be able to offer yourself in a way that's an innovation on the service day, as opposed to going and painting the walls or, handing out soup or handing out backpacks. There's nothing evil about that. In fact, it's awesome. But this would leverage you differently, right? It would arguably leverage your skills a lot more or your connections. So that's kind of our flagship model. This year, we have a slate of 6 nonprofits that are receiving that pro bono consulting. Those are staffed by partners. Our actual staff, social venture partners, doesn't actually work on those projects. So that's one way we deploy our resources, and it's one of the ways we're well known in Dallas. Another is more of an education model. So we run something called the Nonprofit Impact Institute. So that is a resource for nonprofits to come and join webinar sessions, understand best practices, understand do's and don'ts, understand really basic fundamentals to get them set up, and to make sure that they are doing things in their best interest. That is run by partners as well. So that's content created by partners. That's a committee of partners that want to be involved in that. They have a resource. There's downloadable content, so bylaws, fundraising strategy, all sorts of different things. I think we hit 1,000 downloads last week from nonprofits. So that's another way that we deploy our resources. And just to convolute this even more, I'll tell you another. We have a for-profit leg that engages in impact investing. Investing. So impact investing is all about for profit, for good, right? And there's a spectrum upon your that your investment sits upon. When you make an investment in a house, you're looking for different returns on that investment. One is a living place, or let's say it's purely for an investment. You're looking for a return, a capital return. You want to make a profit. If you make an investment in a nonprofit by donating, you're not looking for a profit. You're looking for an impact return. And those are on opposite ends of the spectrum. So philanthropy and profit seeking are on opposite ends. And in the middle exists a space called impact investing, and making investments in companies that yield profit, but also an impact can vary on that spectrum at any point. I'll stop there. Is that all making sense?
I'm stealing your slogan that For profit for good. I think
That's not
that's a
mine.
good mind shift, because a lot of the nonprofit groups that I've worked with, and especially with the dance community, it's always like, well, we're a nonprofit. It's like, but that doesn't mean you have to be a starving artist. You can,
Right.
there's sustainability, because the more you sustain yourself, the more impact you can make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you're struggling, you can't do that.
Wow.
In the for profit for good. And yeah, Diana, take it.
Oh no, I love everything that you're saying, and thank you so much for that, because this is you actually really broke it down, fundamentally broke our listeners that are not familiar with that. So thank you so much for that. I did want to pivot over onto something. Is there, because I know you talked about projects that you've worked on and everything, but is there any project or any partnership currently right now that stands out to you, like that, that you've encountered in currently with SVP?
One thing that sticks out is, well, honestly, they're all a lot of things I get to do are pretty awesome and profound, in my opinion. One thing that's coming to mind, I think you might enjoy hearing about, is the project, the pro bono consulting that we're doing as part of the Young Professionals program. So that same idea that I said about how the partners leverage their skills and give consulting to a nonprofit, the young professionals engage in that as well. So we get assigned a project and we get assigned a group. It's a little different. The partners, they get to self-assign and they get to pick their group and they get to do all that. But the young professionals is sort of an exercise and a learning opportunity. We get assigned the nonprofit or the for-profit that we're going to work with, and we're going to try to, give them consulting. So my project was a real estate company. Mm-hmm. They are a landlord here in Dallas. Their tenant population is in zip codes that are highly needy. They don't have a lot of financial skills. They don't have a lot of savings. They don't have a lot of job security. They don't have a lot of health and wellness in their lives. And I know all this because of surveys that they've given out to their tenants. Mm-hmm. So this is one of those for-profit, for-good examples. This is a for-profit company that, makes profit on the rents that they collect and the properties that they own, but they're also looking for an impact. Now their project was, just to set the stage, they provide a financial literacy program to their tenants. So their tenants get something in the email that says, here's a program that you can engage in, and it'll teach you about saving and all these different financial literacy skills, among others as well. And they're not getting the engagement that they want to see from their tenant population. Mm-hmm. So their project to us, the scope of the work to the young professionals group was, how do we increase that engagement? And there were a couple different ideas. One was, can we offer them a rent incentive? Can we say that if you engage in this program and you score a certain score, you finish, you get your certificate that you completed it. Can we offer them $40 off of their rent monthly? Is that compelling? Wow. And then in the aggregate, yes, the company loses that rent revenue, but they also achieve a more financially and physically healthy tenant population in exchange. And would that affect their tenant turnover in a positive way for them? So would that have a business return as well? That was an idea. It was a little too complex, so we didn't end up going with it. But that's just one example of how you can kind of be creative with profit seeking and impact, right? You can kind of play with the fine tuning and pick what you're going to get out of the system. The example we did end up going with the idea we ended up going with is an event put on for the tenant population that really closely mimics a resource benefit fair. So if you had a large employer or you had employer-sponsored healthcare, sometimes they do these benefit fair events where you can come to them, and as an employee or if you were part of a union, they would do this too. and there are resources that are available to you. So your health insurance would be there, your dental insurance would be there, your other health and wellness services, maybe some chiropractor, or all of the vendors would be there that are available to you. We wanted to mimic that because there is so much resource available to these folks that they're not taking advantage of. So we can build community, right? We can get them out into a space where they can see and talk to the professionals that are able to help them. So the financial literacy component, those folks would be there. Along with that could be other nonprofits, nonprofits. They could be available, right? Who's around in the zip code area that would be useful for that tenant population. So I
have a question on this.
Sure.
So let me ask, how long has this process been going on with this community and, y'all are offering these things?
Do you mean that specific tenant population? I want to say a handful of years that they've been up and running.
Okay. And this is where I'm kind of like, wait a minute, because I've worked a lot with communities that are socioeconomically disadvantaged. I taught for a while in those communities.
Okay.
And it was always so hard to get the buy-in. It was always, what is y'all's buy-in? Because this is going from neighborhoods to actual campuses and students, but it was always, they're going to get the benefit without the buy-in. And this always just drove me crazy because I'd be like, you're claiming that you don't have anything. And I know you spend all that money on those new, Dre Beat headphones and this, and you got a better car than I do. But there was never that buy-in. And then so the nonprofit sectors, those givers kept giving and giving. And it's just like, but they need the buy-in. They need the buy-in. And they got conditioned to that. And so I don't know if y'all have seen any traction because y'all tried different ways to get that buy-in from them. Was there anything that kind of worked a little bit better? The event versus the $40 off rent, Squid Game, something to kind of get them out there to, just do something, change it up a little bit. Like, did y'all find anything that worked better?
So it hasn't come to fruition yet. We're still in the phase where we're going to pitch for the funding for those events. So I can't tell you, built into our pitch is measurement, right? So we want to track and we want to have data-driven results so we can say, yes, this worked, didn't work, what did work about it, what didn't work, how did we get the referrals, how did those people join? And then that way the real estate company, they can take a look at that and see if it's successful and if they want to continue it or make changes. I completely agree. I mean, really the scope of the project is designed around the issue you're describing, right? Resources are available, but we're not getting the buy-in that we need from that tenant population. And that's frustrating, right? And that's kind of what you're expressing, is that's frustrating that you see that there's resources, but these populations, as you know, they're so needy, and they also lack a lot of skills. A lot of times they don't know how to take advantage of what is available to them. They kind of just know how to go and make ends meet. And I think that really is the crux of the issue. It's infrequently that people they're so inundated by privilege that they just, and they're turning away from it, and yet they're still impoverished. Right. Yeah. A lot of times it's more about they don't have the resources and the time to educate themselves about what they need to do with their life to clean it up, or how to empower themselves to earn more money, or what might be more strategic for them in terms of their earning. They're really trying to make ends meet, and they have a difficult circumstance that. Really, that's usually the issue at large.
Yeah, because when you're in, and I know a lot of our listeners might come from that community. I've been in that community just as a startup entrepreneur. Like, totally, everything changed when you're like in debt, living credit card to credit card. And so when people are in survival mode, they're not thinking self-actualization. How can I start investing in my 401 or my IRA? Right. They're just like, how am I going to put food on the table? And especially with everything going on now with the increased prices, the tariffs, a lot of these things are putting that strain on people. And I kind of want to get your view on this, because I mean, you're doing awesome things. You've come in a position of helping others, putting people above profit. I know you keep saying that you came from that privileged state.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Is that just saying like you came from, a 2-story house with a pool and a poodle?
That's exactly what it means, right?
Yeah, okay.
I was, my father was a pharmacist. Both of my
Nice.
parents grew up maybe lower middle class or probably a little lower than that. But they both worked really, really hard to really, establish us as a family and have our finances set up for the long run. And
Awesome.
my mother's a speech pathologist. Now
Oh,
she's
wow. Okay.
now she, trailblazer in her space. My father is a consultant in the benefit space. So, I've been well provided for, right, in my life. You said 2-story house with the pool. That's exactly the case.
Okay. Same.
And to me, I look around and I see a lot of talented people. I see people that could self-actualize more, right? But they don't have the time, they don't have the space, they don't have the skills. And that's really what is compelling to me as Jason's holding up his equipment.
Oh, no. Yeah. Sorry. We were just trying to see if it was still recording. And I was like, yeah, I see the recording button, Deanna. It's still there.
So
yeah, keep going. Cause you have a lot of great nuggets to share. And I wish I could like take your brain, serve it up and hand it to my students that I used to work with, or hand it to a lot. I don't know. Cause I, represent Dove Springs, Austin, Texas. It's like, we keep giving, which is great, but I kind of live by this motto of you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. And unless you change things and develop yourself, but and I think y'all are facing the same thing, is like, how do you connect with those people who don't want to change? How do you connect and build and empower them? Because you can say, like, I grew up in this wonderful home and they came from Section 8. Where's that middle ground that you meet? And how do you connect that?
Because they don't know, they don't have the resources. Like, how would they?
The tenant population, to keep it kind of specific about that idea, and how they were trying to provide resources to them. They were majority single mothers households. So you can imagine there's childcare, there's healthcare, there's constant work and trying to provide for that family, as a single parent. There's transportation issues, right? We live in Texas here. Public transportation is not widely available or successsul.
Yeah. I don't know, like, has Dallas, because I know Austin is trying to build out, the tramway and all this, and it's like billions of dollars.
We could talk about the politics of DART.
Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast on that, and you'd probably want someone more expert than me. But you should. That'd be a valuable, episode. But it's hard, right? And that was the point I was trying. That's a picture I'm trying to paint. Is that's really difficult. And so then to be strategic, and like you said, 401k, right? And things that are just so far from the orbit of what's happening right now, right?
Yeah.
And that takes away from their ability to be strategic and build for themselves, even take time for themselves, right? If they want to engage in art, if they wanted, that's a resource, that's an expense. It's really difficult to succeed from that format.
Yeah. And I'll say to all the single parents out there, we see you.
Definitely.
I'm not a single parent, but I pretty much reduced my business as a speaker almost 90%, so I could be with my son for the first 4 years. But to be around a little one and to give, and then to lose your childcare because our babysitter got married. Shout out to Grace. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so for our listeners who might come from that world of privilege, you have discretionary funding, you have a retirement, you have assets. There's a whole nother world out there where single parents, and we know a wonderful one, and who she's crushing it as an influencer, but then everything went upside down with the tariffs. Her business tanked, and I mean she was living lavish lavishly because she had the resources, but things can change in an instant. And this is kind of what I want to throw out there for any listeners who might have an idea. How can you reach that community? How can you help out? The SVP can help give grants to startups like that, or establish nonprofits who help single parents, who help out get a leg up. That's kind of what y'all do, because you see that impact that can happen. Even just having a babysitter for 2 hours a week could set somebody up for a trajectory that could set them up for life. And, you know, I'll just kind of vanish now. Movement, make because y'all have that's the thing. Y'all have the resources. You're doing impact, and I love that it's about the impact, because impact could simply be a meal train for a new parent. Impact could be giving funds to help, rent, anything like that. And so, for any listeners out there, quit talking yourself out of helping others. Make that impact, and SVP helps put fuel in that tank.
We do. And that's part of why I align with it so well philosophically. I'll share something with you. I know there was one topic I want to make sure we get to. I had it in my brain because I looked at the prep sheet and there was something about what's one thing, what's one moment, right? One thing that stuck out to me in kind of designing my philosophy and my approach to this is this idea of charity versus justice. Have you ever considered those two words kind of, against each other? Perhaps not. I hadn't before the Young Professionals program posed this question to me. What's the difference between charity and justice? And I found it interesting because it wasn't obvious to me what the difference was.
Yeah, why?
So charity.
And what I mean by that is, why is that? Why do we need to bring awareness to that, is what I'm saying.
Right. So I'll go into that. So charity is basically giving something to someone, right? It's merciful, right? I have and you need, right? It could be my time. It could be my money. It could be holding a door for someone, right? That's charity. Now, justice, it incorporates this element of what should have been and righting, right? So justice is about restoring what someone should have had, or what should have happened, or what you deserve, right? And there's some element of human right or entitlement in justice, right? Charity is more about the movement of value, in my mind, between someone or something that has and someone or something that doesn't have. And I think a lot of times we don't really talk about how we can enact justice in our personal life. Because you talked about, Patrick, you brought up it kind of a call to action, right, to the listeners, saying, engage in charity, engage in giving to others, right? And I think that's great. You should. But I also think it's important to think about where you are on this spectrum of, perhaps privilege or ability to give, capacity to contribute to others. It's likely that you do already, right? If you're listening, or the three of you. But knowing the reason why you're doing it is really important, in my opinion. Is it because that person deserved it? Is it because that tenant population in, in those challenged zip codes of Dallas, is it because they should have financial literacy? In my opinion, it is. They deserve to have education. They deserve to have resources. They deserve to have a chance to, spend a weekend day painting or whatever they want to do, but they don't have that, right? They don't have the time to sit down and design and create music and kind of learn about themselves. And that to me is justice, because I'm trying to restore what should have been, as opposed to charity, which is, it misses that. Yeah. Right. It's not necessarily evil, but I think it misses the point of right versus wrong.
Wow.
This is good. Yeah, this is good. Wow. And there's organizations out there, like, for those of you listening that have kiddos in school, stuff like Gear Up, college assistant migrant programs, student council, where you can come from like a lower income area, and then they take trips to kind of open them up to the world, show them what's possible. And I think that's where it starts is you're taking them from where they are, showing them where they could be, and then here's the steps. Here's the steps to get to that. I won't say life of privilege, but a life of sustainability, because things can change. And it's that mindset thing. It's
and one thing I'll add to that is your idea of justice is something you get to design. We all have different beliefs. We all have different religions. We all have different ideas of what each person is entitled to. But connecting with that sense of human right is the important part to me. I'd love if everyone kind of had that in the back of their mind when they're giving $20 to their favorite animal shelter, right? It's justice that animal, should have been safe.
Yeah.
One example that the young professionals group, the Dana Juett Residency, gave us an image kind of illustrates this well. There's someone sitting over or trying to look over a fence. So one person is tall enough to look over the fence, and another person is not tall enough to look over the fence. So they put a box underneath so that person can step on it and look over the fence. Now, a charity mindset might drive you to think that, well, hold on, why don't they both get a box? Right? Because it's about the movement of the value, and why is it going there and not here? Why do I have and you don't? Let's just do that, right? But really, the goal is to grant someone what they should have had, which is sight over the fence, right? And so the justice mindset would enable you to bring reason into it and say that box needs to be there for the one person to see, right? That's what we're trying to achieve. They have a right to look over the fence and watch the ball game. So that's one way of kind of breaking it down and helping you kind of build. And that, if you let that be the groundwork, you get to kind of go from there. What do people have a right to? I mean, you could look up human rights and see what other people think. But you can have a personal brand to it and connect to it that way on a personal level.
Charity versus justice, right? This is,
yeah.
Wow. Man.
I love that.
And that's the hard part too, because there's such a divide, with capitalism being the basis of where we are in America. It's like, well, you should work hard enough, you can get that. But it's like, there's systems in place that keep people from getting that. Especially in Austin. Austin has such a checkered history, but some new bills passing, I think, in the Senate or House, where it's just like, no, that stuff doesn't exist anymore. It's like, it still does, and that's that's why it's so awesome that people like you, Alex, are keeping this momentum going. Y'all are helping and educating.
Well, thank you. I'm not alone. A lot of this mindset has been, constructed and adapted through people who came before me that are doing bigger and better things and, got there earlier than me. So, there's plenty of us doing important work all over.
Why couldn't you have been one of my students? Maybe I would still be teaching. I mean, shout out to any students who are listening, but it was like, I would give, because you're talking about having community, you're building, you're having people speak into your life. And so many times, just because of the students I was working with, like, I like Travis Scott. Yeah, I'm gonna, just, I don't know. It just, it doesn't connect. It doesn't connect. And
that being at the end of one of those folks where there's grants being involved, and I'm getting paid from a grant, but not knowing that it's a grant until at the very end. It's like, well, who's funding this? Kind of thing. You're thinking it's investors and things like that, but all of a sudden you find out that it's coming from a grant. It's and I'm still I need to be very educated on this, but in the music business, back in 2003 and through 2007, there was a lot of projects that was used. There was grants pushing, like, say, politics and things, and it's crazy y'all mentioned DART, because there was something there that we did with some campaigns there, including the mayor of Dwayne Cataway, and we didn't know this, but it was things were being worked at the top, and all of a sudden somebody says, "Hey, we know some guys that produce music." And again, we're at the bottom here, have no idea where money's coming from other than we have somebody saying, "Hey, we're going to pay you this." Cool. And so next thing we know, we were making a song for the mayor at that time, and it was called "Pull Your Pants Up," and that made it to the actual billboard in off the highways, including
Wow.
the reason why it made it even to a Dove Award in the Christian community is because it was controversial of some of the lyrics, and it was on the front page of BET.
What?
But this song that we produced and wrote, it was pushed by a grant. And I'm
Right.
like, well, how do I do that? Like, how do I be part of that or be the initiative or like come up with that? And then another one was I had mentioned this to Dan before the podcast. I said, hey, it was around that time. I said, hey, how about like, why don't we look into some grants, like this? Because I was involved again. It happened again, but this was like a few years ago. There was this one lady. I was a part of a video production for almost 2-3 years in a row, and my paychecks were like $700-800 just for being there for about an hour, and I was just recording, just a video operator. I think, man, that was a good paycheck, right? But what it was involved, it was around single fathers, and teaching their sons. I forget the whole story but it was about how they were grown up with no mothers and how to be also a mother, and so they had to cross and put that machismo, that macho off to the side and be there as a, also serve as a mother, the kind of deal. It's a whole lot more involved, a lot of layers. But my point is that this lady was getting a 100,000 grant 1 year, the next year 200,000, next year was 300,000, next year was 400,000. But it was teaching. It was enough money to come in and do series of video production. Again, why can't I be a part of that up there? But what she was doing was creating a job for several, including herself, paying herself, but creating these jobs.
Nice.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah. And it's cool that you brought up the music piece and the kind of just the creativity of the idea. I've come into contact with a group that I think it's called Spin the Spectrum, and they've identified that neurodivergent people connect well with music. And just that, I think it's a kind of giving them a social outlet. I think that's kind of the benefit. And so they have neurodivergent people come and be a DJ with a professional DJ, and they kind of teach them and just kind of give them the keys to the the device, like the one that you showed us earlier, the spin, the decks. And they just have a great time, right? Because they understand it and they connect with it and they're able to execute it. And it's so cool to see that type of creativity, and giving them creativity. It's a beautiful mission. So
I'm looking at the website. This is awesome. What? That is,
Jason's he's a DJ, future professional for sure. You should look at it, and I'm sure you'd be interested. Just kind of taking a look at it.
Fantastic. That is so cool. I mean, where did the time go? I mean, we are literally at the end of the top of the hour. Thank you. I mean, before we say goodbye, I do want to ask you one last final. It'll be a very short one, and then we can wrap it up and say, what does living in between mean to you?
Living in between. When I heard the title of Life and In Between, it made me think of how nonlinear our careers and our personal lives can be, right? We think of we're on this trajectory, and it's just so squirrely. It's so zigzaggy when you really look at it. That's maybe the one consistent thing I've heard from professionals, and probably the most common advice to young professionals is to enjoy the journey, right? Because you can't plan it, you don't know what's going to happen, and just kind of soak it all in. And I think that's a reflection of that whole in between idea, right? You're just kind of riding the wave. You're in between these large moving forces that are, out of your control. And you just kind of do your best with what each day brings you. That's what I think of.
Wow. Beautiful. Wow.
Oh, I love that.
That's awesome, Alex.
That is awesome, Alex. And thank you again for being a part of you're now part of the familia, okay?
Awesome. Perfect.
Yes, you're part of the familia. And for our listeners, if you're joining for the first time and listening to us, please subscribe. And I'm going to hand it over to Jason and Patrick. Where can they listen to our podcast?
We're talking the YouTube, we're talking Spotify, Apple, our website, Life and In Between Podcast. So wherever you get your podcast, just type in Life and In Between Podcast, because there's a lot of other Life and In Betweens out there, but we're the Life and In Between Podcast. So if anybody wants to find out more about you, your organization, where can they find that at?
Right. Especially if you're in Dallas, please get in touch with me. You can find me on LinkedIn. My first name, Alex, my last name, Ferraro. If you're just interested in getting involved in impact, wherever that is near to you, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'd love to chat about it.
Perfect. And we'll put that in the description of the podcast as well, because this is great for those of you that are just thinking of doing something different, want to make an impact, want to get involved, definitely reach out.